Watch this.
Going green starts at home for thousands of Idahoans, but the monetary motivation to put solar panels on the roofs of those homes may soon be going away because of a rate reduction and a certain big, beautiful bill. Speaking of big bills, could one Idaho congressman change the messy and multitude method used in Washington these days?
This is one of those areas where Idaho has got it right, and it's one of those areas where the United States Congress can learn from Idaho.
Singing the praises of the single subject, while also pushing back on political pork. You know, the Palouse is known for its rolling hills of wheat, harvested in the fall. But there's another staple this time of year, a certain sweetened version of it that also has roots way up north. It is written in Idaho's Constitution, Article 3, Section 16. Every act shall embrace but one subject and matters properly connected therewith. The single subject rule, and that has served as a guidepost for lawmakers at our state capital since. However, that's not the case in our nation's capital. You know, they don't call them omnibus bills for nothing. Hundreds of pages, dozens of topics, and claims of, we don't even know what's in this bill. For example, the reconciliation bill from earlier this summer. Big, but very confusing. Well, one Idaho congressman is hoping to change the way things have been done in D.C. for decades. Joe Paris spoke with Representative Russ Fulcher about his pitch.
Following Congress in D.C. can certainly be complicated. Just reading the bills they pass takes time, maybe lots of time. Yeah, you got to get through hundreds or thousands of pages. An Idaho congressman is working to change that process.
This has been a multiple-year effort for me. I started this in my very first year of Congress. The very first bill that I launched was a single-subject bill because I could see right away this is a problem.
A single-subject rule is something Congressman Russ Fulcher has operated with before.
This is an Idaho policy, and frankly, it's served the state very, very well. I experienced that, worked with it in leadership within the Idaho State Legislature.
It's actually in Idaho's Constitution, essentially saying that laws must stick to one main topic, which must be identified in the title of the bill. And if a law covers other topics not mentioned in that title, only those extra parts of the law, they actually become invalid if it passed. The main law would stay in effect.
Anybody who follows the Idaho legislature knows it's not perfect. I know. I was in it for 10 years, and there's problems, and there's always debate. But compare and contrast that to what happens in Washington, D.C. I can't recall in my years in the state legislature in Idaho that we were processing bills that were thousands and thousands of pages long. There might have been some big bills, but they weren't these massive, massive omnibus things because we didn't throw everything into one piece of legislation. It's disingenuous to our constituents.
The current process in Congress, used by Republicans and Democrats, involves omnibus bills, massive packages with no common tie.
Multiple pieces of legislation on multiple topics, all thrown into one bill. And so every member of Congress has to weigh the good, the bad, because there's always something you like, there's always something you don't like. And it just is a bad way to create policy. And frankly, it's a good way to spend more money. And that's both problematic.
The big pitch to Congress, H.R. 4324.
The idea is to improve transparency, to make there fair debate on single topics and not just combine everything into one big bill.
The pitch relates to a major discussion in D.C. this year, spending practices.
If you look at our situation, we've got about a $37 trillion debt, and we have not, as a Congress, passed a budget through traditional means since 1997, 1998, that Congress. And so you have to think about how did all that come about? Well, part of the problem is what is called these omnibus bills.
But there are clearly members of Congress that prefer the system as is.
Where the pushback comes is from those who subscribe to the earmark policy. And earmarks are typically special things for special areas that may not get passed any other way. And frankly, it's a behind-the-scenes negotiation tool that is, in my opinion, just simply not healthy. And is that how things get done? Yeah, that happens from time to time. I just disagree with that method.
So Congressman Fulcher has been working on this effort in the United States House for a number of years, and there is partner legislation being brought right now in the United States Senate by Senator Rand Paul. And Brian, to be clear, and there's some confusion on this topic even when I research it at the congressional level, just because, if this were to pass, just because you can't have multiple topics in one bill doesn't mean that several topics on the same topic couldn't be put together. So some people say Congress would never get through thousands of pieces of legislation, and that is true. However, the pitch involves saying, okay, everything in education here, everything in tax policy here, instead of kind of combining it all.
And to tie this to the way Idaho does it, we talked about this earlier. Like, this was brought up a couple years ago, 2022, and I think in 2024, when House Bill 521, they had that big bill that was like income tax reduction, school facilities, sales tax tied to school facilities, and everybody went, wait a second, this is not how we're supposed to do this. But as the Lieutenant Governor Scott Bedke said at the time, you know what? If there's a golden thread, and you have to sometimes squint your eyes and cock your head to see it, if that's there, then it's still single subject.
Yeah, and that's also the thing, too, is whether it's Congress or the Idaho legislature, the lawmakers govern this and police it on their own. So there would always be exceptions made. However, we have, especially with the big, beautiful bill, and we've seen a lot of the feedback from congressional members, from the American public, a lot of confusion because of how big these packages are. And we even heard members of Congress say, well, I didn't necessarily know that was in there, or that final legislation looked like that. So it's an effort from Congressman Fulcher. We'll see what type of traction it gets, but a lot of things to do in Congress. We have heard from some members that say, you really have to get it done this way. Like, you have to combine these topics and be able to negotiate. And there is certainly a perspective of, okay, well, if nobody's happy, then I guess we can all support it.
The last Idaho congressman to go back to Washington to try to fundamentally change things was Raul Labrador, and that didn't work out so well.
He did change certain ways, though, that the policies are reflected with his group in the House.
In Congress?
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
But the fundamental changes, which is what this would be.
Right.
All right. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Joe. No criminal charges. That is the determination of the state attorney general, which is now Raul Labrador, with regard to the shooting death of a Pocatello teenager by local police. Plus, a man accused of murdering his stepdaughter in Caldwell was back in court. Brenda Rodriguez has those details in today's 411.
The Attorney General's office says the 4 officers who shot and killed a Pocatello teen will not be criminally charged in his death. In a letter released today, the Attorney General's office says that the state, quote, would be unable to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the 4 officers who discharged their weapons were not justified in using deadly force. Victor Perez was shot by police in April of 2025. Officers were responding to a 911 call alleging the 17-year-old was attempting to stab family members and was intoxicated. The Attorney General's office says that one reason they decided not to pursue criminal charges was because the situation was misrepresented to officers and they were not aware of Perez's age or disabilities. Back in April, Perez's family said that they wanted accountability in his death. The Attorney General's office says under Idaho law, they can only consider what they knew at the time of the shooting, meaning that Perez's disabilities cannot play a role in this decision. The Caldwell man accused of murdering his stepdaughter in mid-August appeared in court for a preliminary hearing this morning. 51-year-old Delbert Cornish was at a preliminary hearing this morning for the murder trial. Here you can see him at the courthouse. Cornish is accused of killing 18-year-old Hope Onyx Cornish, his non-biological daughter, and attempting to kill his teenage son. The state filed a motion to amend its complaints to possibly include an additional charge. The hearing is set to continue September 17th. And the judge says that they will address the amended complaint and bail on that day. Pickleball courts in 2 of Boise's parks will transform back to tennis courts. The city announced that it settled a lawsuit after people living in Willow Lane and Manitou Parks areas filed a complaint. Residents say that the noise from the courts disturbed them, even with the windows closed. The city says that the courts at both of those parks will be closed until the transformation is complete. With the 411 on the 208, I'm Brenda Rodriguez.
You know, it's no secret, Idaho's most recent population boom peaked in the early days of the pandemic. In 2021, the Gem State grew by 52,000 new residents. That pace has since slowed to an influx of about 24,000 a year, but still, enough came in to push us over the 2 million mark by the end of last year. And it's a good bet a lot of those new people thought it would be a good idea to take advantage of our sunny days here in southern Idaho, more than 200 a year. And they did that by likely installing solar panels on their rooftops. They've become very popular these last few years, likely because of the financial incentives offered by Idaho Power. But those cash carrots may be about to go away at the state level and at the federal level as well. And these two changes to clean energy policy, as Aspen Shumpert tells us, could significantly impact the price of going solar.
Almost 20,000 homes in the Gem State are lined with solar panels on its roof.
It provides a predictable way to know that they can power the loads in their home with or without the grid. And really, since the COVID times, power rates have just gone up and up and up. So there's also a financial benefit to it, over the long run.
Kenny Faunenstill, COO of Big Dog Solar, says he's seen the demand for solar energy grow since the company started installations nearly 2 decades ago.
When we first started running the company, we did a lot of off-grid solutions for people that had cabins in remote areas. And over that time, it's transitioned from that to small commercial and a lot of residential.
For homeowners that took the leap, financial incentives have been available for years, but that's changing. The first hit comes from Idaho Power. Currently, homeowners pay the solar companies that install their panels for the energy they produce. Any energy that's left over, Idaho Power buys back from homeowners to use for their neighbors' energy supply. Since 2022, Idaho Power has paid those customers on average 5 cents to 17 cents per kilowatt hour, depending on the season. A kilowatt hour is how much energy your home's appliances use in an hour. But earlier this year, the utility company proposed paying homeowners less, ranging from 1 cent to 14 cents per kilowatt hour, a difference of about 3-4 cents per hour.
I thought that it was unfair, but kind of understood it from a business, but I don't think they give the true value for the kilowatts that are put on the grid.
Faunenstill says he's more concerned about a federal tax credit program that's been eliminated by the Big Beautiful Bill.
It's disheartening. I would think that will have a more of an impact on affordability for customers.
The program ending means homeowners would need to complete a solar installation by the end of this year in order to qualify for a 30% tax credit on their installation's total price tag.
I do see a path forward without it because I still see energy costs rising. I truly believe that in the very near future, most homes will, if not have solar, just have a battery backup system so they can have uninterrupted power no matter what the grid's doing.
The Idaho Power proposal is still just a proposal. Talked to them earlier today. It has not been approved by the commission, but the federal tax credit incentives will only be good for homeowners until December 31st of this year. So remains unknown is how customers and homeowners will act in 2026 in terms of investing in solar. But Big Dog Solar Company, which we heard from today, they're seeing an influx in people getting in before this tax incentive goes away by the end of the year. So they're expecting to see some more homeowners take advantage of that before it's gone. What does
Idaho Power have to say about the reason they're changing their rates?
That they want to align with market energy prices. We've seen them change their rates before. This is not the first time. Right. Those rates that we're seeing now are from 2022. They've changed them before that, brought them down before. So not a new thing for Idaho Power, but harsh to see some homeowners take that hit.
Okay, so with regard to people trying to get in before this tax incentive goes away, this new, I guess, change for Idaho Power, they're grandfathering those people who came in before 2019.
Yeah, which is only, I think, about 5,000 people. Right. There's 14,000 who are not going to get those rates that they had.
So people who are trying to get in now, though, aren't they going to be not allowed to these tax breaks, or not the same rate, I should say, for Idaho Power?
For Idaho Power, they're still going to have those rates if they come with that proposal. If they get the solar panels in by the end of the year, they'd get tax incentive. But if they decide to do this next year, they're not going to get that.
That's where I got it. Okay. Thank you very much, Aspen. Well, you know, the gem steak claims a lot of things. The potato, the finger steak, television, even the world's first ski chairlift. What if I told you that one of fall's stickiest treats might have started in a little shop on Main Street, Moscow? Hunter Funk takes us up and back.
Caramel apples, directly tied to Halloween, fairs, and the fall season. But long before caramel apples were sold at every fairground in America, there was Hunter's Candy Company.
Like a lot of small towns across the state, Moscow had its own, store for just about everything, and candy was one of those offerings.
Hunter's Candy Company, a mom-and-pop shop founded by Ray Hunter in 1929, after working in a candy shop for a few years. He later married Anna, and together they served up sweet treats.
We have 2 historic theaters downtown, and in between the theaters is a little tiny storefront. And the story is that when they were there, they would supply the candy for the movies. So people would stop in, get their candy, and then go next door to watch the movies at the Kenworthy or the New Art Theater.
In the 1930s, they developed something that would become the core of their store and Idaho history.
A lot of what we know that's referenced comes from a 1962 newspaper article written by John Mix, who was a longtime Moscow resident, one of the early families in Moscow. And so I tend to trust his knowledge of the town, and he is one that makes that claim that in 1936, Hunter's was the first to make a caramel apple with the soft caramel.
The Latah County Historical Society doesn't know how it came about, how it started, who had the idea, or what the recipe is today. But based on when other states claim to have created the caramel apple, the newspaper's date in Moscow is the earliest.
Those kinds of claims are so hard to prove because a lot of it is hearsay or, that became the lore. That's the local story. I don't know, if there are other towns that claim no, we were the first. There are none to my knowledge, and so I'm happy to just proclaim that, yes, Moscow is the one.
It's now Moscow's caramel-coated claim to fame. Over time, students at the University of Idaho lined up for them, soldiers in World War II carried them in care packages overseas, and alumni would return back just to get a taste once again. Ray and Anna Hunter passed away in the late 70s and early 80s. Their shop closed not long after. The Latah County Historical Society would love to know where the recipes ended up to add to the history of the iconic sweet treat. But for now, they just hope that with every caramel apple this season, people remember it all started with a little mom-and-pop shop in Moscow.
Now we're in fair season. I'm sure there will be thousands of caramel apples consumed at the fair, and I hope that they think of Moscow when they eat that little bite because, we're a small town, but we can really have an impact, and I think a lot of small towns have that potential as well. There's something special about each of them.
And you heard her. They're looking for the caramel apple recipe. That's because the Historical Society says recipes are a big piece of history. And at the Latah County Fair, which starts next week, they're actually having people make recipes from the 1900s, and then they bring them, and the team, the Historical Society, taste test them. And this year, it's coffee cake with real coffee.
How else would you make coffee cake?
I mean,
Isn't that how you make coffee?
I don't know.
Okay, so just because, if you Google caramel apples and the history
Yes.
thereof, the Hunters are not mentioned. It's
Correct.
like Kraft, the people that make, the cheese,
Yeah.
and this Mrs. Printables, but no Hunters.
If you look at the specific dates, she said 1938, if I have that correctly, and all these other dates are like 1942,
40s and 50s.
1950s. So technically, it was in a newspaper.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's true.
so the Spokesman Review back then had it. So I think it's pretty accurate.
All the news that's fit to print. All right.
Yes.
Hunters, good name.
Yeah, great name.
Thanks.
All right, if you've been keeping track over the last couple of days, you know that Boise is now up to 7 triple-digit days for 2025. We were at 101 degrees and 100, respectively, for the first 2 days of September. And if you're thinking triple digits in September are unusual in Boise, you are correct. This is only the third time ever that the City of Trees has had more than one 100-degree day in the month of September. It happened back in 2022 4 times, and in 2020 2 times. So notable in that sense. And we're We're not at the triple digits today, but it is still scorching out there for early September. 94 in Boise. The cloud cover may keep a lid on any more heat potential today. We may hit 95 this afternoon. We're at 90 in Twin Falls and in McCall, upper 80s currently in Sun Valley. So despite the clouds, it is a very toasty afternoon. So we see the clouds hovering over the mountains in our valley. A couple showers initiating over far southwest Idaho and southeast Oregon. Most of that, though, will stay well outside the Treasure Valley. I don't see any moisture impeding on your outdoor plans this evening. So big picture, high pressure remains in control. This shortwave system right here is going to drift off to the west overnight tonight. So a couple showers could linger over eastern Oregon. Tomorrow, things are pretty quiet. Maybe a spot shower or storm in far southern Idaho along the Nevada border. This is what we're watching for the weekend. These two systems are going to merge. They'll start making their way inland late Friday into Saturday. That will boost our rain chances over the weekend and especially into next week. But we'll also bring in a nice shot of cooler air. If you're ready to ditch summer, turn your attention to the fall wardrobe, I think by this time next week, that will come in handy. But in the next couple of days, it's all summer all the time. We'll wake up tomorrow to the mid-60s, a partly cloudy sky lingering into the day tomorrow. Still hot, though. We'll hit the mid-90s once again in the Treasure Valley, upper 80s on deck for your Thursday in the Magic Valley. And in the mountains, still pretty warm into those mid to up or low to mid 80s, even with that cloud cover overhead. 7-day forecast shows us hovering in the 90s through Friday. Boise State home opener on Friday will be hot, 92 degrees in the evening. And then we see that cool down coming in. We'll stay in the 80s through the weekend. And then by next week, we see temperatures down into the 70s with chance of showers and storms pretty much every afternoon starting on Saturday.
Our final moments of the show, let's get to your comments today. Like Dave in Boise County says, amazing. There is actually something I can agree with Representative Fulcher. Now, how about the Epstein files? Still waiting to see how that plays out in Congress, of course. Meanwhile, Pat in Boise says, wow, Joe has to be one of the very few people who was able to actually talk to one of our D.C. congressmen. Kudos to Joe, but same old stuff from Fulcher. My question is, they were just on a 6-week break. Any of you attend any town halls across Idaho from either of our 4 congressional members? Just curious. Between Idaho and candy and now the caramel apple and the famous ice cream potato, why aren't we called the Candy State? That's what Andrea and Meridian wants to know. Candy State, maybe the Sweet Tooth State, a place where dentists thrive? I don't know, any of those would work. We'll see you tomorrow.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.